All right, so let's begin with our opening prayers. And Michael hasn't done them in a little while. If you wouldn't mind, Michael, maybe you would like to do it, unless somebody is a volunteer who would like to do it. I think I chose Michael last week and then he got preempted. But Michael, if you'll be so kind, twice in English, once in Tibet. And then it's for us all to recite out loud along with him. So our microphones may be off, but we can still vocalize and say the prayers and say it out loud. Say it forcefully.
All right, forgive my voice. Opening prayers, the altruistic motivation. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in a state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Dagla dang war je pedra and no par je pejeg. Darpa dang tam chekin pe bardu cho par je patam chekit so je pe. Manam karang yam pe sem chen tam je dewa dang den. Dug now dang drell dur du la na me pa yang dag part zok pe chang chu rin po she to parja. Action bodhicitta prayer. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. De che du sang ma ge ki bar du du ga gi sam ge wala ko. Ma she bar du du ga gi sam ge wala ko. Du de ring ne sung te ni ma sang dat sam gi bar du du ga gi sam ge wala ko. Long refuge prayer. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the yadams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the yadams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. Drinchen sawa dangyu parje pepel den lama dampa namla kyab suchi o yedam kil kur gilatsog namla kyab suchi o sangye chonden de namla kyab suchi o dampe cho namla kyab suchi o Pagpe gendun namla kyab suchio. Pawo kandro chokyong sung me chogyeshi ki chen den pa namla kyab suchio. Taking the Bodhisattva vow. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Jangchu Ningpor Chiki Ba Sangye Namla Kyab Suchi Chodang Jangchu Senpai Yi Shoglang Deshin Kyab Suchi Jitar Nyogi Desheki Jangchu Tugni Kepadang Jangchu Senpai La Pala De Dagrim Shin Nepatar De Jin Drola Pendondu Jangchu Semni Keki De Jin Duni La Pala Rimpa Jindu La Parji. The short refuge prayer. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye Chodang Sogki Chognam La Changchu Bardu Dagni Kyab Suchi Dagi Jin Sogki Pe Sonam Ki Drola Penchir Sangye Drupasho. The four immeasurables. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Manam kadang nyam pe sem chen tam che dewa dang dewe gudang den par chur chi. Dugnal dang dugnal gi gudang dral war jur chi. Dugnal me pe dewa dang mi dral war jur chi. Ne ring chak dan dang dral we dang nom la ne par jur chi.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, everybody, for being here this evening. So we'll do a short meditation. So everybody will sit, please, in the 7-point posture of Varanchana. The most important part is to keep your back straight, whether you're sitting on the floor, on a cushion, or you're sitting in a chair. Keep your back straight. Put your hands 4 inches below your navel, your shoulders back, and it pulls your hands right in. Your left hand up, your right hand lying there, your legs crossed or your legs on a chair, flat on the floor, both your feet on the floor. And your head is just a little bit forward, your chin is just a little bit down. Your eyes are closed or they can be open, and the gaze down towards the direction of your nose, 4 or 5 feet out in front of you, not looking at anything in particular, not thinking about what you're looking at, just a gaze, not a stare. And your tongue up behind your front teeth on the roof of your mouth. And we breathe in through both nostrils, filling our lungs with fresh, clean, pure air. We hold that breath. And exhale through both nostrils, squeezing the abdomen, pushing all that stale, negative, dark air out. And hold that vacant breath. And inhale, expanding the belly. Your abdomen pulls down the diaphragm, opens up the lungs, holds the air, hold the breath. Exhale, squeeze the abdomen, push that stale, negative, dark air out, and hold that empty breath. Breathe in. Out. That's 4. Watch your body position. Keep your back relaxed. Keep your shoulders relaxed. Breathe in. Hold it. Exhale. It's 5. Inhale. Out. 6. Breathe in. Out. 7. In. Out. Eight. In. Out. 9. Breathe in. Out. 10. In. Out. 11. In. Out. Twelve. In. Out. 13. In. Out. 14. In. Out. 15. In. Out. 17. In. Out. 18. Breathe in. Out. 19. In. Out. 20. Now breathe in very deeply. Hold the breath. Check your body position. Stay relaxed. Exhale very completely. Hold that breath. Now Remain in the posture and breathe at your own normal pace. We'll sit for a minute or two and just watch your breath. If thoughts come, just let them go. Use the structure of the breathing in and out, holding the breath. Just breathe deeply at your own pace. Find your own rhythm. Okay, thank you. So watching the breath is the simplest, most profound of all the techniques to develop a meditation practice. To begin with that, and then if you get lost in the meditation, thoughts start coming, let the thoughts go, and then go back to the structure of the breathing. Count 20 recitations like we do, and it will help stabilize, and it gets easier and easier and easier, more natural and effortless as you continue. Okay, so we've been talking about the method as to how to find liberation, how to find enlightenment. So we're on part 4 and chapter 4, the antidote to the attachment to this life. So we were looking at impermanence. So we spent a great deal of time last week talking about just the first section here on page 7 in the outline book that you have. And so we just look at being attached to this life's activities, being attached to pleasures of samsara. We talked a lot about that. We talked about attachment to peace, not understanding the method by which enlightenment is achieved. That's what we've been trying to develop here, and how these 4 obstacles are dispelled. The spiritual master's instruction on meditation on impermanence, the faults of samsara, of cause and result, and meditation on loving kindness and compassion, and the various elements of the cultivation of bodhicitta. So what this requires is a contemplation. You know, we start our meditation session with a contemplation, thinking about these things, actually taking things apart and then putting them back together again is how we get familiar with these things. So to be using this book or any other book that is relevant to developing a meditation practice is what you should do. And you can write your own book, you can make your own notes and so on. So here in this next section, it says meditation on impermanence of the outer world. So what is the outer world? You think to yourself, well, okay, what is the outer world? And then you look here and it says meditation on the gross impermanence of the outer world. So we look at fire, we look at water, we look at wind, and we look at the self-extinguishing of the dissolves with sentient beings. In other words, that when we dissolve into our constituent elemental parts, that our body dissolves into water, dissolves into heat, dissolves into wind, and dissipates and goes away. So think about that, contemplate that, and imagine yourself in the situation where you are, your body is disintegrating. It's very powerful. And we meditate on the subtle impermanence of the outer world. We look at the 4 seasons. We look at the rising and setting of the sun and moon. We look at each moment vanishes into the next moment. We look at time. So to use this book and to sit there and read one of these sentences or read a phrase or read one of these sections, and then just start thinking about that very, very simply, how it affects you, maybe how it affects somebody in your family, maybe somebody is going through some trials and tribulations and how it affects them, their health isn't good or something. Think about that, contemplate that. And you start looking at all the different permutations of the contemplation until you feel like you've kind of exhausted all those different things. And maybe you'll have a moment of a glimpse of just peacefulness, of quietude. And then you go on to the next thing. Say, well, what can I think of next? What can I talk about next? So then you go on to thinking about the 4 seasons, or you think about the sun and the moon, and what is the sun and the moon? What are the 4 seasons? To really take them apart. Use all the knowledge that you have, all the scientific knowledge you have, all the common sense that you have, and examine how sometimes common sense is much stronger, is much more powerful than a lot of the science that we're led to believe, or the absence of science that we're led to believe. Sometimes our common sense, really is a real indicator of what reality is. So to examine that, maybe our common sense is flawed. Maybe we need to look at that. Maybe we need to sharpen up our common sense, our body of knowledge. So you could be taking notes during this. You could be having your eyes open. It's not like you have to have your eyes closed. You don't have to be rigid or anything like that. But what it's developing is single-pointed mindfulness. You're taking all these ideas, these concepts, and you're kind of taking them apart and then putting them back together again. And in the process, maybe you realize that there are some things that are unnecessary, some things that you've been led to believe through your own self or through others or something, that has been causing hindrances, has been causing blockages in your one-pointed mindfulness. So just look for the simple ideas, for the simple just state of being. And look that everything is changing. Everything is changing, the impermanence, everything is changing. So the next is the impermanence of the inner sentient beings, the impermanence of others, and the impermanence of oneself. So this impermanence that we're all here for this period of time, which seems to be quite finite. Maybe we've got 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years, 100 years or something like that, and we look at this as being permanent. That has always been here, it'll always be there, and that for our lifetime, that we feel very permanent especially as we're younger and as we're dealing with our children and young kids and so on, our grandchildren, everything seems to be so immediate. As we get older, we start recognizing the impermanence of things, that life does change. We've been through many changes, maybe different careers, maybe different homes, maybe things have happened in the dynamics of our families and so on, our jobs, things like that. So we see that change is part of being a human being. And then the ultimate change is that we leave this body. And that, but we take with us, this spirituality, which is a simile. We don't carry it like some baggage or something like that, but there is a some kind of a forcefulness. There is some kind of a power with it, and we're going to look at that. We're going to look at that as we move along in our discussions in Buddhism 101. That there is something, we sense that there's something there. So we look at ourselves, we look at the impermanence of ourselves, we look at the impermanence of others, of other beings. And maybe it's through sometimes seeing the death of somebody else, brings the remembrance that we're going to die. So sometimes by seeing the impermanence of others, we're recognizing our frailties, our impermanence. And not only that, but our the physical things that we call our own, our homes, our cars, our jobs, our relationships, all these things are things that we accumulate, and they all maybe seem to some degree or another to be permanent to us. And when things change, it just kind of, upsets us. Well, I thought that was stable. I thought that wouldn't change. But then we have to reconstruct. We have to go back and we have to reconstruct our safety net, when something like that falls apart. But, as that happens, as we get older, we start realizing, yes, that's what life is realizing those things and having to deal with those things and not becoming emotional with those things and developing a wisdom about those things. So we investigate the impermanence within oneself by looking at death, by looking at the characteristics of death, by meditating on the exhaustion of time, the exhaustion of our lives, meditate on separation, separating from our family, separating from our friends, separating from our jobs, separating from our body. So using this book as a guide is what we need to do. It's here for us. We don't have to wait till these ideas come up in our head, or those kind of waiting for that, we're going to be sidetracked. Our monkey mind is going to take us in many different directions. Oh, I got to get gas in a car. Oh, I gotta pay the rent. Oh, I got to do this. Oh, I got to do that. Or so having a guide like this to develop one-pointed mindfulness is very important. Then this next section, it says applying others' impermanence to oneself. So observing another's death, hearing of another's death, recollecting death in your mind. How did you feel when someone passed away? Someone close to you, someone who wasn't close to you. Maybe you went to a funeral of a neighbor or something like that. They weren't particularly close to you, but you did it out of neighborly respect and so on. But to the family, it was very important to them. And, but then in your family, it would be important to you. And then sometimes, we go to these funerals and they have the all the pictures of their lives and movies and stories people get up and everything and things that we take for granted. And to hear these things sometimes can be very, very inspirational. Give us pause to think about, our own lives. Maybe it's someone who was a very noble person and did very good things in the way people speak about them. And then sometimes it's a funeral that maybe is very quick. And maybe that speaks to who that person was. Something that that there's not a lot of time spent on things like that. Maybe there's not a lot of love lost or something, and to consider that. And we shouldn't be trying to build a life where people are going to celebrate our lives. We shouldn't be thinking in those terms, because that's attachment to this life, and we have expectations about that, and that can hold us back, from having an effortless passing. Are we worried about something? Are we worried, oh, they're not going to love me. Oh, they're not going to say good things about me. Oh, they're going to squabble over the money that I leave behind, the possessions I leave behind, and so on. So we need to square all that stuff away to be able to allow ourselves to pass beyond that. So all this is dealing with impermanence, isn't it? So coming to grips with impermanence is extremely important. The beneficial 5 effects of meditation on impermanence leads one to release the attachment to this life, as I was just saying. It nourishes our faith to understand that there is this continuum. We are part of something here. This phenomenal nature, as it is, has many redeeming qualities, many good things. It's here as a support for us, to be able to recognize who we are, why it is that we're here, why it is that we keep coming back to here, and then what it is for us to be able to liberate from this. So our faith should be a system by which we can recognize all those things. What our safety net is, what this is, the comforts of this life, and so on. What the attachments, what the pitfalls are of this life. And then the reasons why we would like to liberate from this life. And then how to be able to do that are all implied in our faith. Our faith in who we are, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we do it. It supports our perseverance by digging into impermanence, supports our perseverance. So we talk a lot about perseverance when we talk about the 6 perfections of being a human being. One of the 6 perfections of being a human being is developing good, healthy perseverance or diligence, to set a goal for yourself and to work towards that goal. Sometimes we find that the goal is a fantasy, something that was a false goal, some kind of an egotistical goal. And we have to have the perseverance of our faith to be able to say, you know what, I made a mistake. I need to pull back and I need to change course. That was a big mistake for me to do that. But on the other hand, maybe in developing our faith and understanding that system, we need to have faith in that. We need to have perseverance in that. So we need to develop that one-pointed mindfulness with that in mind. So again, evaluating all these choices that we make, why we do these things, what they are, why we do them, and then how we proceed to do them. And then another of the benefits is that it quickly frees one from attachment and fear. So the attachment, I want these things, and the fear, oh, I'm going to lose these things. Oh, I'm going to lose my life. Oh, I'm going to lose this body. Oh, I've worked so hard to have this position in my life, and when I die, and yeah, I do have some sense of an afterlife or some other life that comes after this or something, am I going to lose my spirituality? Am I going to lose the things that I have been able to spiritually gain in this life? Will I be able to have the benefit of those in the next life? So putting all that, squaring that, being able to understand that, and some of that is very abstract stuff, but it's stuff that we should contemplate because it's things that nag at us and things that when we become most vulnerable, when we're most weak, when we're losing our hold on things, we're losing our sense of what life is, that we need to be able to do that fearlessly, with courage and understanding and experience. The experience of being able to let go over and over again in this life comes from the meditation experience. This is one reason why we meditate. This is the benefit of meditation, that each meditation is a rehearsal for our death, letting go. In our meditation, we know we're going to come back, but if we're doing our meditation properly, we're going to come back and realize that there were some things that we met there that were causing us problems in our contemplation and our meditation. And there are things that I need to let go of. And then the result of the meditation is you become simpler. You become freer. You recognize the fears because you're going through if you're doing your meditation properly, you're thinking about, oh, I don't want to die. Oh, I don't want to give up this body. Oh, I have so much fun. There's so many things that I want to do, so many things I didn't do. And so we contemplate those, we think about those things and put them into a sense of a reality for ourselves, of how this works. What is the spiritual system that we are applying to our changes, to our impermanence? How do we deal with these things? Many people think they can, think their way through all this on their own, that they can develop their own system. And maybe some people do, but many people of great notoriety have confessed that they thought that they were powerful. They thought that they had great knowledge. They thought that they had great gnosis, that they had great insight. But when it came time of a crisis in their lives, there was no thought of their spirituality. And they became completely flustered and lost. Ram Dass, Richard Alpert, is a case in point. And I know we've talked about this before. He made us a documentary called Fierce Grace. I don't know if it was based on a book. I don't remember. Maybe it was, but it was based on many lectures that he gave. And here was a guy who had millions of people, just total respect for the man, and a great leader, a great spiritual leader. And he had a stroke at about 60 years old or something, totally unprepared for it. And his spirituality was out the door. He just didn't know what to do, what to say, or anything like that. He was just caught up in the terror of his stroke. And it made him realize that he really hadn't developed anything. What he had developed was a castle on sand. He had a great castle that people admired him for and came to him to learn how to build their castle in the same mold as he did, but he realized that it was on sand. And then he had to go back now with an affected mind and body, because now he's had a stroke. And now he had to deal with that. And he had to bring that became a great teacher to him. And he said, I was stroked, and the stroke became a great teacher for me. So we can certainly wait for things like that to happen, or we can understand that in this system and in the stories of this system, we can see that there's many, many people who can relate their experiences and maybe give us some confidence to begin and to be able to prepare ourselves for impermanence, for our death. So all this becomes, this is the fifth effect of meditation on impermanence, becomes the cause for the realization of the equal nature of all phenomena. The equal nature of all phenomena. So what does that mean? I think it means that there's two sides to the same hand. That we are dualistic beings and we hold on to one side. We hold on to this living, the 60 years, 80 years that we have, we hold on to that, but we don't look at the other side, which is that we've had many lives and we've died many times, and that there is this reality that is beyond this reality that we call life. So there's this equal nature of phenomena. There is this duplicity within each one of ourselves that actually becomes the grace of being able to attain wisdom. The wisdom comes both sides, experiencing both sides, and seeing that both sides are true, both sides are right from a certain point of view. Both sides are wrong from a certain point of view. And to be able to recognize those dichotomies and see them all as temporary, see them all as transitory. It's part of our life as a human being that we can recognize this. No other being, all the other sentient beings can't recognize this. Animals don't recognize this. Insects don't recognize this. Many, many elusive, abstract spiritual beings that we hear stories about in mythologies and so on, they don't recognize that. Human beings recognize that. This is the gift of being a human being. This is why being a human being is so special. We're going to examine that there's 6 realms of being a human being. That there's a hell realm of being a human being. There's a hungry ghost realm of being a human being. The hungry ghosts are miserable beings who are completely insatiable. And that there's an animal realm of being a human being where beings are just thinking and behaving animalistically. Some are behaving and out of great anger and hatred and killing and taking lives and stealing and so on. And those who are insatiable, who are always unsatisfied and go through life like that. And then there's the what we call the God beings, the God realm, where beings think that they're so superior. Certain human beings think that they're so superior. Maybe they're religious figures, or maybe they're academic figures, or maybe they're political figures, or maybe they're just business people who think that they're like gods, that they have all this peacefulness that they've manifested for themselves out of their fabrications of what their life is, and they don't pay attention to other beings and so on. But they live like gods. And then there's the jealous God realm of beings who are God wannabes, who are in constant conflict with each other, who are vying for the attention of the other jealous gods and all the other beings, the human beings and the animal beings and the hungry ghost beings and the hell beings and so on. These jealous God beings are like titans. They have great ability to be able to manipulate the minds of other people. And these people will give them money and give them power and so on. But meanwhile, they're using it selfishly for themselves, and they're trying to amass as much as they are. They're very, very, very greedy and very jealous of each other. So these are all parts of being a human being. And at any point in time during our life, we're some combination of those 6 realms of being a human being. There's some times when we might be 50% of this and 10% of that and 5% of this and 20% of that and so on. And it kind of changes through our lifetime. You know, as a child, it's one thing. As a teenager, it's another thing. As a young adult, it's something else. And as we get older, it becomes something else yet again. Different jobs, you know, different things that we're doing when we're in school brings on certain things. Being in the military brings on certain things. Being in school brings on certain different things. Having a family. So all these dynamics you see are happening to affect all this. And so we learn to recognize all this through being a human being. This is why we have this life, is to be able to analyze all these things, this gift that we've given ourselves. Why? Why do we have this life? Isn't that one of the fundamental questions that everybody wants to know the answer to? All the philosophers, you know, offer up different answers. So it's a fundamental question that each and every one of us has to answer for ourselves. We have to dissect all that we are given, all that we have in this life, our working basis. If you remember chapter 2 in the Joy and Liberation, this is our working basis, and then put it back together again and say, okay, this is why I have this life. So this is the nature of all phenomena. This is the equal nature of all this. And we all have to deal with it ourselves. But there are systems to help us to do that. We don't have to do it by ourselves. We have teachers, we have philosophical systems, and so on. If we move in the absence of these, and we make mistakes, big mistakes, we can wind up being institutionally structured. The police will take care of things for us. The courts will take care of things for us because we haven't learned how to live in a society. And we become a sociopath and all that kind of stuff, you know? So there's systems all around us. There's family systems, things that we adhere to and so on. But most of us, I think, by the time we've gotten to where we are, to be where we are exactly right now, looking at each other on this screen right now, you know, we've come to question everything that we've known up to this point and say, you know what, I think there's something else. And I want to know what that is, at least being offered up by the Buddha Dharma. What do they have to say about this? And then you put it into your mix and you begin to process your own philosophy, maybe. You know, it doesn't have to be that we become, you know, all one philosophy, that there's not some flexibility there. You know, we have our own experiences and we have our own life to lead, and we have to respect that. And the spiritualists will respect that. You know, there's a space and there's a freedom to be able to do that. Those that say, oh no, you got to do it like this, you got to do it like this, you got to do it like this, that you got to run from that. That's a trap. So this is the chapter on impermanence, the attachment, the antidote to the attachment of this life. And this is given to us, this is shown to us, this is this is offered to us and helps us by the spiritual master, by our teachers, by the gurus and so on, by our spiritual friends, and to allow ourselves to be open to receive criticism, suggestions, congratulations, honor when it's suited, and so on, to be part of that. So what do you think about this? Now we have some time to talk. So what do you think about this?
One thing that I think about in terms of Ram Dass, a movie that was made after his stroke and towards the end of his life, was entitled Becoming Nobody. And in that film, he described how he had studied hard and become a Harvard student and become a psychologist and became a professor and wore a three-piece suit, and people looked up to him, and he built his whole life. And after that, he went to India, but he was saying that he'd spent a good part of his life building himself up. And maybe it was the stroke that was the change moment, but at some point, everything shifted. And his dynamic then was becoming no one, becoming nobody. So he didn't give everything away that he owned, but he started to give away his attachment to himself and his ideas. So that's a thought that came up.
How does that relate to you? I mean, can you see wisdom in that? Has that had any kind of an effect on you?
The film had some impact on me. Life itself has an impact. There's for people that are in the working life, some segment of them, there's some effort by some group of people to tell them that they need to plan for their retirement. And so when you talk to a financial advisor, what they talk about is the period of accumulation. And that's all your working life when you're putting money aside, supposedly. And then it comes to the point when you don't have a working income anymore, and that's the time of distribution. So you're spending down what you spent all your life accumulating. So yes, it very definitely relates to my own life. I look at my possessions, which for the most part are a lot of books, and they meant something at some time when I got them, but they don't mean very much at this point. And there's a lot of good books.
You probably want them to go to some place that will honor those books.
I do, and that's not as easy process as you might imagine. The libraries say, well, not the libraries, the charities say, well, people don't want books anymore. They've all gone digital.
Well, that might change one day. They all might wish they kept their books.
Could
But
be.
nevertheless, anybody else got a comment?
Lance,
Yes, sir.
I was reading on impermanence this week, and I came across something from the Plum Village Chanting Book by Thich Nhat Hanh, and it really, for me, summed up a lot of things. And I haven't completed, and may not for a while, deciding what I really make of it, but it's very short. And it says, I am of the nature to grow old. There is no way to escape growing old. I am of the nature to have ill health. there is no way I'm of the nature to die. There is no way to escape death. All that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change. There is no way to escape being separated from them. My actions are my only true belongings. I cannot escape the consequences of my actions. My actions are the ground upon which I stand. And I don't know about others, but for me, this hit a core of impermanence that really resonated with me. And
How long ago did you read this?
within the past week, it seems, well, so simple is probably, I don't want to trivialize it, but it just makes me understand as I wonder about impermanence and sometimes worry about impermanence, which everyone does. That's the crux of the problem. This summed a lot of it up for me. And I'm sure that there are other things that will come to me that will amplify that. But you know,
Well, how does,
everything is really around us is impermanence, and impermanence is not bad. You know, if it were not for impermanence, I would have not seen my little girl grow into a beautiful young woman. I would not have wanted her to be a permanent little girl, or my son. Impermanence is the enduring part of our life. Everything changes. Friendships are impermanent. They change, not necessarily because of a quarrel or a fissure. It's because impermanence is a dominating theme that runs through our life until we move on from this life and dissolve into the universe.
okay, very good. Thank you. Somebody else have a comment?
James Baldwin, in one of his books, I think the Fire Next Time, I think I sent you a quote from that, Lance, but he says, among a lot of other things, that there are four things in life that are constant, only four, which he says are birth, death, struggle, and love. And that where we go awry is that we're always trying to make things constant or make things permanent, which by their very nature, were never intended to be. But we want to hold on to things that, which, I mean, when you start talking about attachments, I mean, I think about that quote. I empathize with Thomas and his books. I've got lots of my own books, but I've got lots of books that I inherited from people who meant a great deal to me, and these books meant a great deal to them. I'm never going to be able to read all these books, but somehow the idea of taking them to a used bookstore, you know, you take 5 or 6 boxes and they go through them and say, well, we'll give you $2 for this one and $3 for that one and throw the rest away. I just don't want to do that. I mean, it seems like I'm trying to make something permanent that I suppose is not intended to be, but it's a struggle.
Amen.
Yeah,
I know about that struggle.
Yeah.
yeah, and think about books are only what, 500 years old?
Yeah.
600 years old. You know, mankind's been going on for a very long time, but books are a relatively new invention.
Yeah, well, the printing press was when? Was 1400s or something? I don't know, but
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, Gutenberg, right?
yeah, no, in something I read a long time ago. Well, it's an education book, Teaching as a Subversive Activity, which I read in 1970, I think. And
Why? Because it undermines
well, yeah,
preconceived ideas.
exactly. Yeah, and what they're saying in that book, and I was a young high school teacher then, is that we had a long period of education where, you know, the grandfather ran the farm and the father inherited it and the son inherited it and his son inherited. I mean, things didn't change a whole lot. Now being 1970, being 50 years ago, I mean, the speed of change has just accelerated. And what they did was put on a 60-minute clock, they put the advances of human civilization. And on that clock, the printing press was invented something like 9 minutes ago.
Right.
I mean, and most of the things in our lives were invented in the last 2 or 3 minutes, and there are things in our lives now that weren't invented in 1970. I mean, it's just the pace of change is unbelievable.
Right.
Which is, I guess ought to help us understand the importance of recognizing impermanence, but it doesn't always. We just hold on to things going by.
Okay.
Right.
Anybody else have some comments, observations?
I mean, instead of thinking in terms of impermanence, I guess I think in terms of, or what gives me more peace is like meditating on like no self, non-self, you know, that there isn't this self that, you know, impermanence even comes into play. So yeah, I mean, it seems like there's a sort of a conflict between impermanence, but then, you know, that there isn't really a permanent self or non-self or no self, or that it, you know, that's just this concept that we have created.
Well, for those who haven't had that particular realization, I mean, what do you think about, what can you offer to those people who haven't gotten to that level?
I don't know. I mean, but in terms of my, you know, the way I meditate, it's mostly focused on this, you know, non-self, no self, awareness as consciousness, not awareness of consciousness. You know, that this ego self that we think is in our head is really not, is really not there. That, you know, it's a an imaginary falsehood, and it's, you know, it's very hard to get rid of that. But once you start becoming more and more comfortable with that, your own impermanence becomes, you know, less and less the crisis than before.
Okay, that's very good.
Hey,
Thank you.
Lance,
Yes, sir.
Zara. I'm thinking as I'm listening to other people talk of something that happened. It's like practical things that I like a year and a half ago, or even this time last year, Lance, that I would have had a completely different response. And then like when I become aware of it, like I'm aware of like the difference in responding. Like it's like this very magical moment of, for me, personal transcendence where I'm like, aha, right? So this past Wednesday, my cell phone broke and I own a business and my iPhone just stopped working. I had a software update issue and I have not had a cell phone since basically last Wednesday night, an operating one. So I've had to like do everything off email. And normally for those of you who have just cell phones or just rely on cell phones, because I get so many calls and text messages a day, this time last year, this would have been a life-threatening emergency for me. The level of reaction I would have had to this would have been like everything would have stopped. I would have been going from going to one Verizon store to another, to an iPhone store, purchasing maybe even a $1,500 iPhone 12 because I could not have a working cell phone. So I won't get a phone back probably till Wednesday or Thursday. I had to send it off. And I made the decision, this is like a big deal for me, to not make a purchase, an iPhone 12, and just go without. It was an intentional decision to recognize I'm not an emergency room doctor and no one's going to die because they didn't text me, right? But this time last year, that would have not happened. I would have made a purchase to an iPhone 12 and just traded in the iPhone 7. But it's repairable. My point is I recognize that and sharing tonight with the group, that I was so attached to these things, like as my identity, as like, what am I going to do without this, that I recognized letting it go, like talking about the idea of impermanence. It was just like, it doesn't really matter, right? It really actually doesn't matter. And this doesn't define me, the cell phone and the text messages and all of those pieces. And it was freeing. Like I literally was shocked, Lance, that it was almost instantaneous, the relief I got by just sitting with it for like an hour. And I was like, I'm going to be okay. And guess what? I'm okay. And so many people are shocked that I'm okay. They're like, are you sure you're okay? And I'm okay. But I just wanted to share that because when I have these practical moments that happen now, I'm thankful, if that makes sense. I'm thankful that it's no longer a crisis, but an opportunity to grow, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's great. That's
Yeah.
really good.
So are you now prepared, Zora, to give up your cell phone forever and continue to grow?
I'm going to be honest with you, Ed. I literally could go back to a landline. I have a fax line. I could go buy one, but I'm thinking, I don't know how many of you all use cell phones day to day, but man, they are a time drain, the hugest distraction in my life.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, somebody else have some comments?
Just a quick remark. There's Kempo Norge. He's Nyingma. And he made a succinct remark a few months ago, and he said, just remember, without impermanence, we would not be able to experience the phenomenal world. There wouldn't be a phenomenal world.
Okay.
Well, I think that's eye-opening.
What does phenomenal mean in that context?
Just our everyday world. What
Well,
we're-
it means that it's beyond explanation. It's phenomenal. Can you explain what it is? Can anybody definitively explain what it is? It's phenomenal.
Phenomena is stuff.
Okay, so but when you say I'm not sure. When you say without impermanence, we would not have a phenomenal world. I'm not sure how to link that.
if
Well,
Buddha-
there's another saying that says something like, what are the benefits of suffering?
All right.
And one of the benefits of suffering is that you recognize that you're arrogant and that you're causing your own suffering and that you need to liberate from that. So it opens up a door to be able to say how enslaved I am. That's a benefit of suffering.
Okay. That helps.
Seems to me that as humans, we can only experience change. right? Things that don't change, we don't really observe. You know, if you think about it, you're holding someone's hand, and if nobody's moving, you can't really feel that the other hand is there. You experience changes in temperature, something that's warmer or colder than you. But if it's the same temperature as you, you can't tell the difference from yourself. And I guess what I'm thinking is that that phenomenal nature of the universe is that it's something that's different than us, and we can feel the difference. If it didn't exist as different, there would be no experience.
Yeah.
Aren't thoughts phenomena?
Sure.
Things that they can be tangible things like an object, or they can be events. And a thought is a kind of event as I see it. They are things outside of consciousness.
Well, what is consciousness then? Is that phenomena?
Sorry?
Is consciousness phenomena?
I don't think so. That's
Why? Is it permanent?
yes.
How do you know?
I believe that.
Ah, okay.
Phenomena are things that are ephemeral to me in nature. They are passing things. They do not persist. I do not want to say persist through time, because time is a concept.
But
And I'm having an evolving perspective about time. Time and space are concepts.
But consciousness is not.
No. Consciousness is what extends, is ever present. Time, and I believe I said this in another forum, time is a concept that we create to make order of the events and agendas of our lives. It's a concept. And it's a concept to which people attach destructive importance, at least at times. Schedules, on time, every time. Time, it's phenomena.
Okay, anybody else have a thought about that? About consciousness or time or anything related to impermanence?
Well, when you're dead, you're not conscious anymore.
Mhm.
So I looked up phenomena to see its technical definition, because that's what I'm like. And it had as the word of the day solipsism.
Of what?
With solipsism is the word of the day on the Merriam-Webster website, which means the theory holding that the self can know nothing but its own modifications, and that the self is the only existent thing. See also extreme egotism, which I really enjoyed.
So is it permanently existent or is it temporarily existent?
It's not within the definition.
Well, what do you think it is?
The self. Is the self permanent or temporary?
Right.
I think we're temporary.
I mean, I think consciousness is totally changing constantly. I mean, objects of consciousness are, are arising and falling. And once again, there is no self. Self is something that we have constructed, and all there is this consciousness.
William, did you have something?
Oh, I was going to mention the fact that, you know, all of this stuff here. We're getting ready to move to Florida, as was our plans, and we packed up all of our house things into a pod, and we've got it in the pod it's been in the pod for several months. And we've discovered how impermanent things are, in the sense that we've got a place in the house here for them, like hanging a picture on a wall, that type of thing. But when we move to the next place that we go, we may not have the same kind of wall. So everything that we've got in that box is like, we've been a year without using it. And it's like, I know that it's definitely impermanent. And
Is there joy in impermanence? Is there joy in permanence?
I think there's a joy in seeing the impermanence and becoming aware of it and breaking the attachments.
And then what? Abiding in the impermanence? Recognizing that that's what we abide in.
Yeah.
I wanted to say, like, I really appreciate you all. Like, I think there's something refreshing when you can appreciate it, right? When you recognize it. Like, I like what y'all just shared about your moving pod. And then you probably don't even realize you don't even miss that stuff, right? You probably don't miss it day to day. It doesn't do anything for you in a way
Oh, we
that
don't miss it.
We don't miss it.
It's amazing. We have done without it for a year and a half now. And we see how unnecessary it all is.
Yeah.
We have 3 plates, 3 forks and spoons. And that's it. It works. We don't
yeah.
have a dishwasher.
I feel like that's sort of like what happened with my cell phone. I realized, like, I don't really miss it. That makes sense, but I don't know that that would have taken me getting to this place, like, would have taken, a lot of work to get here. But I appreciate your story and sharing that with us.
When we packed up, we thought we were going to be moving in like 2 weeks. So we figured we don't need any of that. And guess what? We didn't need any of it.
So what are you going to do with it?
I have no idea. That's an interesting question.
this may turn into a burn box.
Have a big yard sale.
So let's hear from some of the people who haven't said anything. Tom, you have anything? Kate, you have anything?
I like the experience life through impermanence concept.
So,
I
say
like
that
that a
again.
lot.
Say it again, please.
We experience life through impermanence. And it makes sense, the concept of time, in order to recognize impermanence, to therefore realize precious human life. I'm sorry about the background noise.
So you've come to a point of just through being practical, just accepting it for what it is. Did you recognize it, before, when did you recognize impermanence?
I think that also ties directly in with the concept of the ego and the self, recognizing that we are attached to our ego, which is part of that dualism, just another name for it essentially. And how do you recognize the ego to therefore recognize the attachment, to therefore learn how to detach from the ego? And one of those methods or concepts to follow would be time, or the concept of impermanence. And for me, what I deal with is those concepts I understand, I accept, and I agree with. I also think that there's something to the body being part of the animal realm, because we're mammals, so we are part of, being technically an animal. And for me, without getting too much into different concepts, I feel my body doesn't always recognize impermanence and still feels as if it's still in a very stressful situation. So, and I think maybe that just comes with practice and creating a habit of training the body to recognize, no, we're moving forward in time. We're not stagnant in one position in time or in the past. We're moving backwards, we're moving forwards. So that's something that I'm working on. And I appreciate listening to everybody's perspectives on this topic.
Well, in the past number of weeks, or even just this weekend, you related something to me, that we were doing some practice, and maybe you've done some other practice in the past number of weeks and so on, and that you felt different as a result of doing those practices. Is that right?
Absolutely.
And how would you express that different?
Normally, I can only describe the physical. So normally within my body, it's very tight. There's the pit in my stomach constantly. It feels like a burning. When I completed the practice, when I'm able to get into the meditative zone, the flow of things, all of that calms down. The only thing I can equate it to would be water. And when it's the constant stress that I feel, it just feels like sloshing around. The water's like a storm at sea type thing. And with the practice and meditation, it's just a tranquil body of water for a moment, and then eventually it just kind of, the storm comes back and the waves come back. So I'm really trying to make that habitual tendency of tranquil waters within myself, and the practice absolutely helps that. And I think it's because it creates this safe space where I'm not thinking about the past, I'm not worrying about the future. I'm connecting with my body, speech, and mind. I'm connecting as one, and that is bringing me peace. That is bringing me fully into the present moment, where that's all I'm thinking about. That is saying the mantra, focusing on how the breath moves through the body, how the sounds of the mantra appeal to my hearing sense, so on and so forth.
Okay, great. Thank you. Tom and Michael, you guys are both very thoughtful about things like this. What do you have to say?
Well, impermanence is one of the three marks of existence. And to me, that means that the quality of impermanence is beyond our comprehension, and at the same time, critical to our experience, to our sentient experience. So I see a phenomenal world is one in which all things, physical, mental, or otherwise, are constantly in a state of flux. Just like everything we see in the world as an analogy, everything, and in our mind as an analogy, like thoughts. Everything that is phenomena is constantly assembling and degenerating, or coming into being and dissolving, or generating and then passing off. So it's all, everything is everything in phenomenal world, as you've said, Lance, is compound, and everything that's compound is made up of pieces that are brought together to be, because they are interdependent. The existence of everything else in the phenomenal world depends on all of this interdependence, and the interdependence depends on the fact of impermanence. So it's to me, we must meditate on impermanence, because it's the rule, it's the law, it's what drives us, it's what makes us dissatisfied when we can't make things the way we want them, when things don't stay, we don't get to keep things, when things change every instant. I mean, that's a great source of satisfaction, because we, if we're looking at life that way, if we believe in the rise and fall of all phenomena, it's very difficult to make any decisions about our nature and the nature of what we experience at all, because the entire universe is never the same, from 1 second to the next. So it's a concept, but it's a concept that can keep us on the edge of our seats, and can help us with our help us develop a healthy view of our world, of the sentient world.
So if we have to count on something, the only thing we can count on is impermanence.
Yeah, yeah. Rebecca said there's the only constant is change, and that's the only thing that's, when we turn our head, everything's different, everything's gone. I'm reborn, fully reborn every half a day or so, when all of my cells have restructured, all of the electromagnetics in my physics have completely transformed. It's hopeful that we have theoretically thousands of opportunities to be reborn every day. We have no choice.
Yeah, the
It's not-
phenomenal world is a world of possibilities, isn't it?
Yeah.
Unlimited possibilities.
Unlimited. All of these opportunities to be part of, and to be something completely different.
To be emotional, to be afflicted. be confused.
Yes, all of these choices, yes.
Yeah.
Or to be aware, to be present,
Or to be free,
to be liberated.
to be liberated. Is that not an option?
It is.
Well, I'm just amazed as many times as Michael has changed over the 15 years that I've known him. I still like him, and I liked all the changes in between.
I've only heard stories, and you all would have been my friends years ago.
Michael cited something Rebecca said, and I wanted to go back to something Rebecca said. She used the word motion. And so I think, you'll clean this up for me if I get it wrong, but motion is without motion, there is no, well, motion implies impermanence. But without motion, there is no experience. And without experience, what's left? Did I get that, Rebecca, at all right? Yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah, that's the word motion in there is interesting to me. Yeah.
So that
If we were
implies-
not experiencing change,
Right.
we would have no experience at all. That's my thinking.
If we had no experience at all, we have nothing at all.
so
And there would be no existence.
Right, right, right,
it implies a growth potential,
right.
movement.
You'd invited Thomas to speak, and I don't want to shut him out.
There you go.
I don't have much to say. I really don't. I mean,
Well, it's just, you're worth waiting for. That's the thing.
oh, Ed,
Come on, Thomas.
oh man. Practice like your head is on fire.
Love that.
Don't waste any time.
Let it go. Don't grasp. Because this time that we have here, we might not have again for a long, long, long time. Don't waste this opportunity. That's what it is, an opportunity.
Yeah, but that makes me think I want to grasp. If I'm not going to have this again.
Well, do we
No, I'm
maintain, do we decide to maintain the status quo and say, okay, I'm happy with this, this has worked so far. I've gotten to this point. I'm happy, I'm satisfied, may not be everything I want it to be. I'm not going to look any further. I'm not going to do anything further.
No, because then you have no motion. And without motion, you have no experience. And without experience, you,
Mhm.
So to be in a spiritual structure.
but I think we tend to,
Go ahead.
do that. I mean, we tend to just,
Tend to do what?
we tend not to want to move forward if we think we're satisfied where we are. But we don't, it's like the guy that had the beautiful white post. He liked it so much, he was just going to leave it completely alone forever. The more he left it alone, the less he had a white post. I mean, you can't really leave it alone, but we try to.
If
I don't
we're, yeah, I think that's one of the definitions of suffering is more like dissatisfaction. And I think we can be satisfied for a moment until we realize that what made us satisfied is gone.
Yep.
So I like the Buddha's story about the man whose possessions were in his house, and the house caught fire. And the man kept running into the house to bring out his possessions. When actually the sort of moral is that our house is on fire. There's nothing to own. It's all in a state of galactic turmoil. So there's no reason to keep things. And so it's hard to be, you're satisfied when you take your eye off the ball. A person who's satisfied is no longer paying attention.
So is that a commercial for not paying attention?
I hope not, because I'm a mindfulness guy, and that's all about developing attention. So, no commercials about the.
But if you're satisfied, why do you want to rock the boat? You just have to. Some of us have to.
All right, well, I think it was a really good conversation to have everybody speak about impermanence and think about impermanence. And as we've all agreed that impermanence has changed, that our minds will change about impermanence too. So, and that's part of the fun, to enjoy, this whole process, to enjoy the changes, to enjoy the impermanence. And to look at it from a point of view, I'm a spiritualist, so I always try and invoke, the idea that what we're on is a spiritual quest. We've exhausted all the physical stuff. We've exhausted all the intellectual stuff. Now we're investigating and enjoying all the spiritual stuff. And so what is the result of that? It seems to be more and more freedom, more and more liberation, more and more simplicity, more and more happiness, more and more peacefulness. So, for myself, this past weekend, we went to Dharma Surya and we did some practice. We were there from 9 o'clock. It started in the morning and had some teachings and did some recitations of some practices. And then we did a couple hours of recitation and meditation. And I felt fine, everything was good. I came home Sunday evening and got up this morning, Monday morning, and went to do my normal practice. And I just slipped right into a wordless meditation. I didn't realize how liberated I had become because of the weekend. So, it's a testament to what practice is, to be free and to be happy and to have enjoyment, to have gratitude, all the good things, kindness and so on. No frustration. So, to develop a daily practice takes some work. You can carve out 20 minutes or half an hour, maybe an hour, something. It grows on its own. And then from time to time, you take a day, you take a weekend, maybe attend, a retreat for 5 or 6, 7 days or something like that. And you can really see the changes that go on. Here we're talking about things like this, but to really manifest those changes requires a timeout, requires a concentrated effort to one-pointed mindfully just leave everything away, just separate, just become peaceful. So there's a way to do that, and that's what we're trying to expose here. This is the antidote to the attachments to being a human being, to having life and so on. All right, well, thank you very much. Unless anybody has anything that you want to add to this, we'll do our dedications. So whatever changes we've gone through, maybe we've all had a little bit of a change. Now we're dedicating the merit to that. We're dedicating whatever wisdom we attain, whatever skillful means we attain, whatever method we attain. We're dedicating this to the enlightenment of other beings and those who might not otherwise have that benefit. So we may not be able to see them, but from our hearts to their hearts, we are making this dedication. So Michael.
Dedication prayers, the lineage dedication prayer. Dorje Chang.
What page is that?
page 18, sorry. Dorje Chang, Talopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa, Dharma Lord Gampopa, Phagmadrupa, and Lord Drinkumpa, please bestow upon us the most auspicious blessing of all the Kagyu Lamas. By this virtue may I achieve the all-knowing state. May all who travel on the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of samsara by defeating all enemies, confusion, the cause of suffering. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. I pray that the Lama may have good health. I pray that the Lama may have long life. I pray that your Dharma activities spread far and wide. I pray that I may not be separated from you. As Manjushri, the warrior, realized the ultimate state, and as did Samantabhadra, I will follow in their path and fully dedicate all the merit for all sentient beings. By the blessing of the Buddha who attained the three kayas, by the blessing of the truth of the unchanging Dharma as such, by the blessing of the indivisible Sangha order, may the merit I share bear fruit. The Dekorma prayer. By the virtues collected in the three times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate root of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Drinkumpa Ratna Shri, who is omniscient Lord of the Dharma, master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. Dedication prayer by Lord Jigten Sumgon. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, yogins, yoginis, and dakinis dwelling in the 10 directions. Please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the three times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana and the innate root of virtue not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Shravaka or Pratika Buddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Maras, and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta. And through that, may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I, in any case, gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om, ah, hom. Om, ah, hom. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable from the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones.
Wonderful. Thank you all very, very much.